Good morning, Debarshi sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, Bidu. Good morning. Very good morning. You're perfectly audible. Yeah.
Good morning, sir. So, dear participants, I'm just introducing Professor Debarshi Mukherjee from Jamia Milia Islamia University. His profile is very big and very long. I'm going for a very short description. Professor Mukherjee is a alumni of Vishwa Bharati Shantiniketan. He had MBA, PhD, and teaching experience of approximately 25 years. And Sir has published more than 100 articles and books. Out of that, 8 books are very prominent. And books are very new and in very new areas like exploring social intelligence with special reference to NEP 2020. Then new books on educational policy. Sir was, that is Professor Mukherjee was a professor and head in Tripura University prior to uh, this Jamia Milia Islamia University. He has received some patent also, and one of them is on innovation patent. So with this brief profile, I'm now handing over the session to Professor Mukherjee, and Mukherjee will talk on how to design your research. So, sir, it's over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And first of all, I'd like to wish very good morning to all the participants, and I sincerely thank Professor Singh for having me, in this refreshers course of Mizoram University, and it's always a pleasure to connect back to Bidhu. I think which we have been doing since long, and it's a pleasure moment. And I wish I could have been there physically, but nevertheless, it's learning what that matters maximum. So we'll try to utilize that time in talking about how do we design our research. So let me share the screen first, and then we'll go ahead. We'll be good to go. Just a moment. Yes, you just have to give me a signal whether you can listen to me, and also is the screen visible to you all?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Uh, So technically speaking, when we talk about research design, which is taught at the research methodology program, be it you are doing it at your postgraduate level or in the PhD coursework. So we understand three important components. That is your statistical design, your instrument design, and sampling design. So beyond that, research design has got an enormous scope, which we sometimes, um, I'll not say ignore, but then there's an oversight that happens, and because of that reason, we work on uh, those components maximum, and we try to dilute the plausibility of designing our research, which could have a ramified application to multitude of other social aspects, which could have made our research more contemporary, more relevant, more concurrent, recurrent, and at the same point in time would have given us the joy of achieving something which we always had wanted to do. Now, that is the basic reason for which I chose this topic, because this is something which I speak at different platforms with different set of different cohorts of researchers at various walks of their research journey. But even then, having said so, I presume that before we start, the fundamental course of research methodology you have already been through, and from there we will start. So primarily, uh, I mean, usually I ask this question if we talk about the philosophical aspect. This is one interesting dimension. We'll start from there. So technically speaking, the definition of research design, apart from these three things in the RM program which we have all studied, it categorically mentions there are a couple of important attributes which interject in the process of research design. So it says it's an arrangement of conditions. So primarily, any research without the environmental variables or ignoring the environmental variables might not yield the kind of response we want it to produce for us. So the arrangement of conditions for analysis and collection of data in a manner that aims to combine relevance to the research purpose with an economy of procedure. The two important things that can be combined here, the purpose needs to be fulfilled, and also we must not have an opulent procedure to achieve that objective research purpose, and that would essentially contaminate the entire process. So therefore here we must concentrate on understanding what could be an economy of procedure, what kind of tools we might look at, and we try to find out the relevant justification for it. For example, if we talk about data collection part, which is an integral part of your sampling design, so therefore we, in some cases, we have being collected for once. In some cases, we have multi-phase data collection, sample selection, sample collection. In some cases, we have multi-stage. Now, in this case, for economy of procedure, we can see that data being collected once is most economical because it will save time and money, energy. But do they reflect the true nature of your research dimensions? Do they nature the true nature of the respondents' uh, you know feedback or responses? So there the question comes: what kind of sampling design we may choose that could economize the process and without impacting the outcome, so that it can help to realize the research purpose. So therefore, now you hope you understand that research design, the importance of it. Otherwise, generally what we do, we go for cross-sectional study, we prepare a survey instrument, send the research scholar to the field and collect data, analyze and do it. But that is a thing of past now. Here we need to look at two more aspects. And since I come from the field of quantitative research, I would like to comment initially on the quantitative part, and I'll try to talk. I mean, I don't know if someone in the students and the participants group are from the qualitative domain, but I thought there would be at least one. So for that qualitative researcher, I have put some important insights of qualitative research as well. Now the question comes is, what is the generalizability of your findings? Now, let me tell you one important thing, because I remember one of my scholars went for a presentation uh, in a conference. So, same question was asked at him, that you have done this study. I mean, listen to my question very carefully, participants. I hope you are at different walks of your life, and you must have encountered similar situations. I do not know if somebody asked you previously or not. Let's say one of your research reflects the, excellent model fit, and that always gives you a reason for enjoying it. And the model that you have used is basically made by yourself. Now the question comes, what is the guarantee that the model that you have made is also applicable maybe 4,000 kilometers away from your home location, or maybe in a different state or different country? If not, then one thing suffers, that your model is successful at that instant moment for that instant, you know, respondent space, but it lacks the generalizability aspect. So therefore, your research design cannot be a conclusive one until and unless it has a very um, wide aspect, because it needs to generalize the findings, it needs to generalize the outcome in terms of your social research and your aspects. So therefore, the design becomes tremendously useful if it is pervasive in nature, if it can reflect the findings in different conditions. And if it does so, so you know that you have actually worked on the important aspect of theory building. So this is the kind of distance a research is expected to cover. I'm not saying that every research has to develop a theory, but understand that fundamentally you would know that a research design is made to realize the objective, which is not for only for that instant moment or instant sample, instant area, instant time. It has to transcend the boundaries of time and still needs to be, relevant and to have a higher or longer shelf life. Now in PhD program, what we generally see that, a research that has been conducted by you, I mean your scholar primarily, your scholar, and then in 6 months time a new finding comes up, is being challenged. In science stream it happens all the time. During COVID we have seen there were papers which is having an argument. Some papers, they had a different claim altogether. Now this is what we need to do. Fine. Now another important aspect is, uh, when we do research, three things happen. Either we corroborate, either we challenge. Just a moment, let me just, somebody is very eager to meet. Let me close it. Just allow me a moment. Okay, sorry. So the three things that are very important is either you extend an existing theory or challenge one. If you are not doing any one of these, then you are either corroborating them or you are coming up with a completely new theory. So I would request the research that you have done lately, just look at it and try to figure out in which four dimensions or any one of these four dimensions have been achieved through your research or not. If yes, then perhaps you are in the right path and you can extend it further. Clear? Now we move forward. Now, why basically you are, looking at, or rather why must we give so much time behind it? Because uh, this lecture or this session usually I run for around few hours or maybe 1 week for my scholars, for them just to understand that the argument which you are trying to pose it has to draw its strength from the, or it should stem from the solid theoretical basis, existing literature review, and which you try to prove it. Now, the question is, it is not always imperative that you have the outcome in your mind before you write your thesis. So, the answers at the instant moment may not be known to you, but you try to investigate them. Like we talk about any experimental studies, experimental design. It is not always possible to comprehend or to prognose the outcome. But still, if it strikes you that there is a problem, you may like to look at it and you try to seek an answer for it. And therefore, you can have an unbiased approach towards your research, which is reliable also. Now, the causality aspect is a very critical component here, which you are trying to find out if there is any interpersonal relationship between them or not. So, you know, every occurrence in the society has got a causal cord attached to it. So, there's always a cause and effect. If you, if you want to eat food, you need to uh, light a fire. So the fire brings the temperature up, which brings water to boiling, and you can have rice with that. So the causality part is there. You can have rice in the lunch, although it never questioned, but we know in the somewhere the no the raw rice was boiled and it converted into the rice that we eat. So the causality part, or maybe when the cloud formation happens, it rains. So the causality is everywhere. It is just you have to find out. Fine. Now I'll just introduce this thing here. In some of the researchers, because during the PhD viva also or thesis evaluation also, we get to see that in a quantitative research, when we talk about impact analysis, most of the time direct effects are being shown. But in this society, when every other component is related or dependent on so many other factors, only direct effect without having any kind of mediation or moderating role of variables is not possible. There will always be some kind of an moderation activity taking place. Be it you look at it, you take a note of it, understand it, realize it or not. Like you are working in a project, the project get successful, or maybe the implementation becomes successful. So do you think it is your effort and the success they are directly related? There is no other effects involved. There maybe your team members contribution was there, maybe the way environment was very conducive, the weather was good, so many other variables are there. So the causality part, when you are trying to establish the causality part, you need to explain things very very clearly, what is happening around you, so that it gives you a very clear understanding. Fine. Now I know. I mean, I'm not reiterating that, but this is something we do to set the ball rolling. I hope you know the difference between the method and methodology, because I put this slide here because in some of the sessions I had this challenge of letting people know the difference between them, because we use these terms interchangeably: research methods, research methodology. So methods are different tools. I'll just try to conclude it here. Methods are different tools which are available for use. Methodology, to the contrary, is that the steps, the approaches, the tools, the techniques one has conducted to resolve the problem he or she has undertaken. So method could be very generic in nature. We have statistical method, we have instrument design methods, we have literature survey method. There are various methods available. Now, which one you picked up? You picked up one survey method. You picked up one literature review method. We picked up one particular statistical design method, and A plus B plus C plus D go on to N. That makes the methodology for of your methodology to solve the problem. This is the basic understanding I want all of you should have. Now, if we talk about the process is very, very interesting. That, where you define the research problem. Now, I mean, since it is the diagram is self-explanatory, I'll not get much deeper into it. But one thing I'm going to ask you, if we talk about the research philosophy, where does it stem from? So, if you look at the three cardinal research philosophies are first to be vox populi, second is ceteris paribus, and the third is mutatis mutandis. So if you read these three of it and you understand the basic purpose of research. So vox populi means people's voice. Know this thing very, very carefully, because this is the fundamental of research, irrespective of science and arts or humanities. But here we miss out this thing. Vox populi means people's voice. That means the problem that you are going to undertake must have a very strong societal impact, so that it must benefit the society by some way or the other, because that is what people are saying, and that is also applicable to the responses that you collect in data sampling also. So vox populi, what people say, that means that true or generic feedback or genuine feedback from the people or your consumers or your customers, whichever way you want to treat them, your desired cohorts actually. Next is another interesting part. We call it as ceteris paribus. So ceteris paribus means remaining other things constant. Like we have demand supply. So if the demand goes up, or the supply again having, the prices shoot up. If the prices shoot up, the demand comes down. So this is all basically a linear relationship we talk about. But in everywhere, the linearity, or to achieve linearity, may not be possible. That is the reason whenever we hypothesize, we write remaining other things constant. If the price increases, the demand will decrease. But again, if we add subjectivity of the nature of the product, the exact equation may not hold to be true. So therefore, ceteris paribus tells you that about constructs, about items, which is the integral part of quantitative research. And who or what are the variables that are having a strong, impact on the final outcome. The third we are talking about is mutatis mutandis, which means the what could be changed, what variables could be changed, that should have to be altered. So it talks about the correlational relationship between the impacting variables. So mutatis mutandis and ceteris paribus, they actually are on the crossing path, is opposite to each other. So now, while we are talking about the research philosophy, there are many epistemology and all those things are there. But these three essentially are so strong; they bind your research process, they bind your research analysis, and helps you to realize them. Fine. Now, if we talk about the other philosophies, which is positivism and interpretivism, these three, I hope epistemology, the theory of knowledge. So origin basically from where it came. Now, for example, if we are talking about, in my research, we talk about constructivist theory, we talk about media richness theory. There are umpteen number of theories are there. Even the theory which my lab has proposed, called learning continuity theory. So they have a series of, I did not say interested, but epistemologies are there from where you can, bring up from where the ideas came. Now we talk about the positivism part. So it believes that everything in this world is measurable. That is the positive attitude. Even if we say the qualitative aspects of, let's say, love, emotion, so they can also be measured. For that reason, we use the scale, didactic scales. Fine. And interpretivism means the way we interpret. So everything, every incident, if you try to, interpret between two people, you will see that there is a difference. So, but everybody has interpreted in their own way. But then there is a subjectivity attached to it. So, about the previous three philosophies, as we talked about, now Vox Populi, Ceteris paribus, mutatis mutandis, plus positivism and interpretivism. So they are basically having a very strong subjective approach with which we try to deduce if there is any theoretical aspects associated with a research problem or not. If not, then one needs to dig it deeper, because without the theory, perhaps the model or the attributes people generally try to put might face difficult challenges from the reviewer, not only from reviewer but also and the academic fraternity at large. They do not pay too much interest or too much, they do not bother much, because if it is not highlighting or extending an existing theory. Fine. Now, another important part is that the study that we are going to take. Now, I mean, I, I'll give you one example. Long time back, maybe I think today we are sitting at 2024. I'm talking about 2008. So I went for a conference. Now, one of the participants presented a paper. I'm not naming them because that's not the objective. I'm just trying to stay focused with the subject that we have on hand to discuss. The study was the selection of bathing soap caste wise. So the researcher was trying to portray that a particular caste prefers a particular soap. And I do not know. If you ask me, I do not know the logic behind it. But as the presentation concluded, he was, I think, not allowed to speak for the complete length because things were going little out of hand. So the session chair.
Sir, Debarshi sir, are you online? Hello? Debarshi sir, your mic is mute.
I think he got disconnected
Oh
because video also is this share also is stopped.
my goodness. So okay,
Oh,
okay.
he's back.
I don't know. So how long I've been out of the scene? I don't
Um,
know.
No, maybe
maybe,
for 2 minutes,
yeah,
not
yes.
much.
Oh, I see, I see, I see. Just a moment. Just a moment. Let me share the screen again. Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as I was talking about, I do not know how far I was available for you to listen to. Uh, the argument that I was trying to put before was the kind of problem you'd undertake. The example that I was quoting, this one of the scholars was presenting uh, his research paper, which is based on the selection of soap brands as per the caste of the people. So the chair stopped the scholar and said, "You have done the research, fine, per se, but who is interested?" This is a very big question. Whenever you are designing your research problem, make sure that you are catering to the vox populi. That means people's voice, what people are really interested to know. Many of our studies, many of our scholars, they pursue PhD, pursue research, and it remains in the confines of the two cover pages, because the acceptability or the problems undertaken, they do not come to the surface, and probably that does not interest the society at large, because we do not care to the people's voice, what people want to know, people want us to understand. So therefore, I put enormous importance on that for all my scholars, and I request all the supervisors attending this session insist on understanding the efficacy of the problem. What is the outcome of the problem? What if I undertaken? Fine. Uh, Now, next we talk about the research question and research hypothesis. This is another big question, because some of the PhD documents I have seen, that dissertation papers, both things are together. So RQs are more generic in nature. Understand this part. So whenever you are designing your research initial phases, you can start with a research question for which you need to seek an answer, which are robust, which are pervasive, which are all encompassing the basic premise of your research, the objectivity of your research. On the contrary, a research hypothesis is a statement which is which has evolved, after series of literature review, which are more direct and for which you seek an answer. So you, to develop an assumption, because hypothesis technically they are the assumption. So develop an hypothesis means developing an assumption will lead to a specific conclusion. On the contrary, uh, research question is devoid of any very specific outcome. It is little pervasive in nature. It is all encompassing. So therefore, if I see through the convergent mapping, so on top it comes research question followed by the hypothesis. So it's better to have one at least in your, um, in the part of your objective formulation or the problem formulation part. So that would give you the relevant variables for which you will seek an answer for. Now, if I have to look at it specifically, again, and to compare between the objective and question, so research questions are very open ended, whereas the objectives are specific and measurable. And that is the reason in thesis we always put the objective, because that's a time bound activity within 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, depending on the UGC norm, you need within which you need to conclude your part. But research questions basically are open ended, and it's an ongoing sojourn. You try to um, you know reflect upon and seek an answer. Fine. Now, Another big question that usually we encounter, that what should be the ideal research method, if it is a quantitative, if it is a qualitative, because the quantitative researchers basically they deride the qualitative ones. The qualitative ones, they actually have a different understanding about research. So primarily we often see a conflict between these methods, if not in person but in methodological conflict do arise. And so in some cases we have seen hybrid mode is being followed, so both elements of quantitative and qualitative, they are populated in the thesis. So in but basic difference, if we look at it, it's that it is deductive in nature for quantitative research, because you deduce all the data that are available to you. Looking at them, you deduce, you analyze them. But in case of qualitative method, they are inductive, so you go on adding components to it. So if we could look at that, for any kind of quantitative analysis, it can add multiple components at a later stage, but which is not possible at the quantitative one, because qualitative research is based on dialogue primarily. Dialogues, observation, discussion, narratives. That's also a very good method of looking at it, because if you want to see some policy level change, so you need to interact with people. So they have that different opinion for which you can capture them and get some meaning out of those discussions and debates. But in case of quantitative methods, they are pretty direct. So they have a specific objective to fulfill, accordingly they can design. Now, in both cases, they have some drawbacks. In case of quantitative method, the objective which you have set forth, either you will be fulfilling the objective or not. But there is no way you can change the course and go back and do it again. That times then, either you have to throw away all the samples you collected which did not fulfill the desired outcome, or you have to let people know that this is the findings which I have got, because there is very limited scope for deviation. On the contrary, in case of qualitative research, you know they are, too individualistic in nature. Maybe if I'm talking about the problem of farmers, for example, let's say in Uttar Pradesh, or farmers in Mizoram, so they may have different problems here. Water is a crisis in Mizoram. I don't think water is a problem. Or maybe if I talk about the coastal area, water is not a problem. But their salinity of the water is a problem. So everywhere, despite your best efforts, there would be some rough edges which is very difficult to meet. Therefore, you won't be able to generalize the findings of qualitative research, because that is the reason narratives are very important. And that's how today you may develop a narrative for some activity in Mizoram. Sitting here in Delhi, my narrative is different. So therefore, though we are working on the same line, same kind of pattern, but output is going to be different. Therefore, generalizing them, as we can do it in quantitative research, any research model, say UTOT model, you can see SurfQual model, you can see, they are generic in nature, so they are applicable across the globe. But here, in qualitative method is very, very important. You are doing a cohort study, or maybe the old age home study, people how they are feeling. So the people's responses in Australia may not match, let's say, in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or Delhi. So that is the reason we have to be very, very cautious that what kind of outcome we are expecting, how we are going to realize the objective. Fine. Now, as we have seen, the deductive is top-down approach gradually brings down to one, and inductive we go on adding more variables, as we have just now spoken. Another important aspect is triangulation part. Now, I have seen PhD or doctoral theses. Some of them are using theories, some of them are not using theories as such, but still they highlight a lot of researches that have been done. But triangulation basically means that there are multiple aspects. If we talk about methodological aspects, so one methodological aspect is having slight flaw into it, but that can be compensated by using another popular methodology which can compensate the gaps in the former. So therefore, there are four different triangulation techniques available. One in 1978, Norman Denzin was a psychologist who designed this triangulation technique. First being data triangulation. So instead of asking or the questions to the only one cohort, you can split it into multiple cohorts, multiple sources, so that you can cross check whether the data thus collected actually reflects the true nature. Next, we have the investigator triangulation. I do not know if you have done any project or not, but this is the problem we generally face. Let's say ICSR has given you a project within which you are having 3, 4, or 5 different field investigators to collect data for you. But if you do the SDN mean of each respondent's final submission, you will find there is little bit of difference. I mean, you can always find that something, somewhere must have happened with the data. Somebody had fudged it. Somebody has made some manipulation with that data. So therefore, investigator triangulation says that if you are collecting data, multiple sources, multiple people, investigators are collecting data for you, you can find out that which one is more authentic and which one is not, so that you can check them off. Delete the spurious samples and have a better one. The third one is very critical, is theory triangulation. Because if you remember, we said that your objective, your variable selection, finding should emanate from a theory or a set of theories. So therefore, if there are 2 or 3 competing theories which are providing the necessary pedestal for the model to develop, so the variable should come from those theories which you have considered. And next is the methodological triangulation. As I said, you could do only quantitative, only qualitative. You can have a mixed mode approach using qualitative, quantitative, or you can have an action research model. So there are different methodological aspects which you can triangulate and practice to get a better outcome. Fine. Another important aspect is that ethics, research ethics. I do not know the organization in which you are working, whether it has an ethics committee or not. But I hope you know that for any good journal, wherever you are sending your paper, and if you have done your research using human subjects, so you are therefore required to submit an ethical committee clearance, which is very, very important. Otherwise, the journals will not going to, they are not going to process your application. Fine. Because for particularly earlier, it used to be on the basis of the, if you are taking the medical, or if somebody you are taking personal details. But even today, I remember one of my case has just been published in Emerald. So it was based on a tea garden called Ula Tea in Assam. So they asked permission, very categorical permission, from the concerned owner of the company, because we are producing something internal to the organization. So therefore, this kind of ethical approaches, if your study is devoid of, some people, just to avoid it, fudge with the data, fudge with the company name. So they actually create a very bad content out of it. Sometimes it does not even, meet the standards of the journal, and therefore they get rejected despite having done tremendous work. I have seen it myself. That's hence I could see that. Okay, next important part is about reliability. So reliability, those who are into research, quantitative research, would know that reliability, basically, if you ask anybody, everybody will talk about Cronbach's alpha. So the quantitative aspect is there, but we should know what reliability means. So reliability talks about the replicability of your research. That means whether your research model is replicable or not. So how reliable you are. Let's say if I get a score of Cronbach alpha 0.991 or maybe 0.87. So what does it indicate? It indicates that if the instrument which has been used to collect data, if it is used in some other cohort, there's a probability of 87% giving almost the same kind of responses. Which is again not possible because there are so many extraneous variables, but statistically possible. So the reliability is very, very important aspect just to ensure that the instrument through which you collected data and dispatched for analysis is actually a reliable sample size, reliable data sets. There is no fudging involved into it. And then we have the different kind of biases that take place. We'll see later on. Another important determinant for your good research is knowing the validity. So we have phase validity, we have nomological validity, we have construct validity. There are different validity techniques out there. So validity basically means that the variables you wanted to measure in your research, they are actually being measured, they can be measured. Failing which, it suffers from the validity standpoint, and therefore the outcome is never accepted, the outcome gets rejected. So now reliability and validity are very clear components to provide strength to your research. So like we have AV, average variance spread. So there are, I mean, for MOS, for smart PLS. So this kind of very validity responses are always available. So if you can you know get a good response out of it, so probably uh, you can be convinced that the study that you are doing is perhaps giving you a uh, positive outcome. Next, as we talk about the generalizability. So, as I said, the generalizability aspects are associated with theory building. I do not know whether you have already worked on any kind of theory building exercises, theory building, uh, practices, or maybe you have worked on developing a good theory in the relevant area of research. So there is one important aspect that detests the entire function is the generalizability. So if it is a theory, which means you have passed the test of generalizability, that means your model is equally applicable to let's say Mizoram or Tripura or Assam or some anywhere. So likewise, you can create a very wonderful impact through your research if you are able to generalize it. Fine. Next is we have the transferability part. So if it is uh, if you have done some kind of a study in, let's say, Mizoram, can same be done in Kerala? So this is the kind of reliability aspect which makes your study very stronger. Like in biosciences, the manure preparation, जिसको हम क्या खाद बोलते हैं, जो fertilizers. So those fertilizers are good in state A. So are those fertilizers equally applicable or equally compatible in state B, the soil culture and all? So now these kind of transferability issues also affect the research. So the kind of questionnaire you had prepared in the language, the dimension you prepared for Mizoram, will they be equally applicable in, let's say, if I go to Tamil Nadu or Bombay or Goa, wherever. So that is the transferability factor. I'll spend one minute on the sampling part. I hope I don't need to tell you this. So probability sample, this is one important, simple random, systematic and stratified random. So these are the random. Mostly PhDs we have seen, everybody writes that we have followed random sampling, but then it turns out to be convenience sampling. But I prefer to use the term purposive sampling because in convenient sampling, sometimes the outcome gets challenged severely because of the procedural flaw in application of data collection. But if we talk about the purposive sampling, which is uh, over and above the convenient sampling, so purposive sampling talks about identifying a research frame, a research cluster area, uh, where we try to collect relevant samples from. So the sample cluster, the sample unit, uh, should be created with a specific purpose in terms of demography, in terms of knowledge, and whichever way you want to collect it from. And the sample size determination, mostly I have seen scholars say they went online and from there they used the sample size calculator and got the sample size. But for us, we should know there are different techniques available. So one is confidence interval approach, which is again an outcome of Nang and Rusley. So you can, this is a model that perhaps you can create, and usually the outcome comes to be, on this case, 384 approximately, which is a good number. And also, those who are using PLS, you would be knowing that you have a formula of G power, which actually works on the parsimonious sampling technique. That means the very few number of samples reflect the mood of the population, and they try to extrapolate, interpolate somewhere to create a better sample size. This is the calculation. I'm not getting into it. I thought if it was a physical one, it would have been better to do with you. Now we talk about the criterion of a good research: the systematic part, the logical, empirical, and replicable. So, systematic, if it is systematic, then only it will be replicable. If it is a very ad hoc basis research, so perhaps the outcome can always be challenged any given day by somebody who has done, the systematic sampling part, and the literature, everything is followed particular system. So these four important components I want you to make a note of, because whenever you are preparing your proposal for your any project or any for PhD, pursuing PhD somewhere, so you need to follow these four important steps, and they would offer a significant development, uh, into your document formation or the thesis, the dissertation formation. So again, as I said, the quantitative research, it cannot move far and beyond, because the scope has been limiting upon this method, so that you don't digress further. So they are very direct and looking at the microcosm of research. So in a shorter frame, you want to gather them. Next, we have the qualitative approach to design. So again, qualitative research is mostly based on the interpretive nature, or maybe the understanding of it. So this is very much subjective. Like, in political science or any other subject, we have narratives. So X said this, so why X said this, then we come over what B said. So if I say A, B, you need to combine and develop a narrative through our own understanding. So it is like, not statistically significant, but again, subjectively, it has got a very um, good, strong connotational purpose. Now, I'll just tell you one small story here, because yesterday I was in a meeting where one of our colleagues actually retired. I mean, got superannuated rather, not retired, got superannuated. So in that meeting, there were a couple of senior professors of the university was there. They said that there is a dereliction of academic standards in the institution. So people or the scholars are mostly focusing on research papers, high impact factor research papers, publication and all. But the command on the subject which they should have, that is missing somewhere. So therefore, it is very, very important. Those who are doing qualitative research must have a very strong, solid head on your shoulders, so that you must not get swayed away by the kind of narratives or the discussions they're having. So you have to seek it for yourself. So since in the absence of any statistical methodology, very clear, the qualitative research needs to be focused upon very seriously. Now, Miles and Huberman in 1994 had given certain steps. These are the criteria for which the qualitative research would be a better place to work on, the domain rather. So, the intense and prolonged stay or contact in the field, and to design and to achieve the holistic or systemic picture. Perception is gained from insight based on actors' understanding. So actors means the people who are experiencing the phenomena which you are trying to capture. And you do not use a standardized instrument, and most of the analysis is done with words. So you actually read a lot, interact with the people at the ground lot, then you come up and develop your own understanding. So that is, we talk about qualitative research here. So now it has got a flip side too, because same kind of input document, people may come up with their own experiences and prepare a different document than you have prepared. But overtly, this is a method to which people generally use in qualitative research. Now, if we talk about the strength, because so far we have been talking about sorry, qualitative research, but now these days the qualitative research offers a very deep understanding, because it has got a lot of words into it, as you have seen in previous we were talking about. So it can give rise to new questions, because I mean, when we start the work, we have some superficial idea. The more we get deeper inside, we curve in, we talk to the people, then perhaps our questions, which we want to seek an answer for, might get altered. Okay. Now, if you have to plan your study, you can work on the whether it is a longitudinal or cross sectional. Now, it is a exploratory study, or you're going to go for some causal studies. So, firstly, you need to plan on that, or in case you are planning for action research, which is again a process, so it's a cyclical process. That means experimentation or doing in the field. So again, you apply something, maybe a new credit card has been introduced by one particular bank. So what happens here? You are trying to uh, s- you know take feedback after the implementation has happened, and you let people make use of it, and you capture the data. Fine. So those, if it is not qualitative or quantitative, then you are left with only action research, which you have discussed just now. Now, as far as your plan is concerned, you need to set up a good budget for it. I mean, depending on your pocket size, and then you allow people to perform, because this is a very critical four steps that you need to travel to people. The data needs to be programmed properly, transcripts to be given. All those aspects are captured in the budget part whenever you are framing your research design. Then you create the timetable for it. That means when you are going to fetch the sample, when you are going to sit for meetings, when you are going to write the important findings. So likewise, we can create a good timetable for our research. Now, this is the last part. We have come to the last part of it. This is one important aspect that uh, let I mean good researchers or scholars suffer, is the presence of bias. The bias removal is an interesting technique, but we let's see how do they get these biases. One is the design and selection bias. So, if you are at the very early stage or the beginning stage of your uh, data collection part, so you have designed it and the instrument, but you have not, mentioned the proper method with which you are trying to collect data. So some cases it does happen that your design develops flaws, snag into it. The selection of samples are not appropriate. So you are, instead of purposely, we are going ahead with convenient sampling. And you know that since it is my research, my problem, my understanding, so I know what kind of questions I have put and who could be the best person to answer. So now these are, uh, you know, sometimes they contribute to create confusion in your findings. So the sampling method has to be very, very clearly spoken, and then the design structure of your instrument must be, to a certain extent and free from all kind of biases. So I'm not going to select anybody. I'm not going to say as per my choice. I'm going to follow the simple pattern and prepare it. Next is the procedural bias. Uh, when you are trying to ask a respondent when they are filling the data, uh, and you are not allowing uh, good time for them to complete it. So if you are trying to deploy it in a very faster space, and you are not allowing them to complete the step, sometimes it happens we are in such hurry, we go to the field and try collect data, and we forgetting that for me I have read the instrument number of times, but for the new respondent who or she is reading for the first time, it is not be very possible for them to respond at that instant moment. Or maybe the kind of questions you have asked, the kind of background the respondents have, they're not feeling comfortable, they are not being able to respond to it. That's the procedural bias part. Third is the order effect bias, uh, where you try to mimic, you try to speak, you try to understand, or the respondents psychology, and you try to uh, ask questions, uh, like a snowballing part which you are trying to follow. So there also we can create the order of questions gets affected. Let's say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 questions are there. So you ask a question, let's say on 8. Now 8 leads to another question, Google's 8.1. From the 8.1.1, likewise, you can get digressed. That order effect means the pattern in which, or the order in which questions are given, the answer should be sought accordingly. Another important part is the leading question bias. So here you could see a last point where you have mentioned that how did you enjoy using this product? So I am presuming that the buyer must have enjoyed. So he or she is expected to enjoy the product he is being given. So if I'm seeking a feedback, I'm starting with leading question. Now, how did you enjoy? So firstly, you should have been asked whether you enjoyed or not. And now we are talking about whether you have, uh, you know, how did you enjoy this product? That means it is already under, it's a preconceived notion that somebody has enjoyed it. So that is a problem with leading question. Next, we talk about the halo effect part. So in uh, halo effect part comes from the fact that from the interview, when they're asking the particular question, so it develops a connection between them. So for what reason they're asking about any particular phenomena, and you develop an overall perspective of the entire instrument, and you start giving responses to that. So those kind of bias actually causes the samples to bleed. Next, we talk about the confirmation bias. So we are always trying our respondents, because I have designed that model. I need to conclude as early as possible, so that I am asking you the question so that you confirm what I believe. So if I ask a question, was Sachin Tendulkar a good player? He said, yes. So I am moving ahead with that kind of responses. I'm asking how good player was he. So now, if as a researcher, if I always start saying that what I feel, if somebody is good, somebody is bad, so my as a researcher, I'm not being able to hold my neutral position. Rather, I'm leading to that kind of bias and let the people respond to it. कोई ऐसा होगा जो बोलेगा सचिन तेंदुलकर was not a good player. So that means I am actually letting you people speak what I want to hear from you. Now, cultural bias is another aspect. This is something what we need to look at because words, tones, punctuations, particularly if we talk about India, Indian situation, Indian societies are multicultural, multidimensional. So therefore, the community-wise also people do have their own uh, responses. So therefore, we need to have, I mean, a mutual respect for different cultures while you're asking question. Because if the interviewee and the respondents are from different cultural background, therefore chances are there that desired outcome may not be possible even today. Now there are different techniques of bias removal is there. You can use the code. You have face validation technique where we try to you know have appoint experts to look at it, and then you go for more data sources. We talked about data triangulation, so that if I get maximum or different data sets, so chances are there I'll be able to cure the bias if there is any. Then we have alternative explanations, and we can review the findings with the peers who are experts. Perhaps we can minimize the bias if there is any. Fine. So with this, I conclude my session. Now I keep the house for opening. I think we are having good 20 minutes. So should you have any question, I'll be more than happy to address them. Thank you.
Uh, Dear participants, you may ask a question in question answer box. Okay. Still one question is there, sir, that I'm
Yes,
just
yes, yes,
taking.
yes. I'm just looking at it. Just a moment.
One question is there from Ashok Sharma. What is the most effective way to design a research framework that accommodates both qualitative and quantitative approach?
Uh, it all depends on the objective that you have taken, firstly, because ultimately, as I said, the journey of research starts with or stems from the research question in mind. Because if it is a problem that is uh, affecting the society at large and you are seeking an answer for it, so therefore you must have mechanisms to capture them through your research, and that would lead to identification of research variables from the theory, then the instrument designing component, and finally it leads to that. So most effective way in my opinion is that uh, you cannot create a model out of nowhere, so it has to evolve with the theory, and then from those theories you have to identify whether you are challenging yourself to frame uh, a good research statement, a problem statement, and from there you start building your model. I think that is, I hope I answered your question.
Sir, same person has written another question that how can we ensure that findings from the qualitative and quantitative data
Hmm.
complement each other rather than contradict?
Wonderful question. A wonderful question. See, I just before I give you the answer for it, I have a very wonderful story. I hope you know that in Bihar, in either in Patna or Muzaffarpur, I guess there was a the destitutes home. The shelter homes were there. So there was a case of child abuse, and because of that reason, and when the news was flashed in media, some of the state ministers had to resign. And you know who actually revealed or who brought this news to the public? It was a group of students of TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. So they went and sat with them and interviewed, went on and on. So if you are going with the quantitative research, a single instrument, asking the questions and trying to fetch the responses back, that might not yield the true responses. But if we do qualitative research, is iterative. So the way, now I coming back to your question, if you are trying to seek a complementary response for qualitative and quantitative, for one hand you have the theoretical outcome, theoretical research, which has manifestations in forms of generalizability, in terms of traceability, in practical implication, different situations. And on the other hand, your research, which you have done for a cross-sectional time, or may not be a temporal one, a cross-sectional time, then you try to complete that, whether you are extending a theory or not, whether you are I mean when the narratives that you have been able to create, narratives you have been able to bring, whether they are able to you know resonate with the theoretical findings or not. If yes, if some, like you taught model is there, in my research area we talk about learning continuity, we talk about media richness theory, which says that rich media is as good as formal classroom. So if my findings are actually resonating with them, my responses are happy with this thing, then perhaps that is the time when the theoretical reason or the practical one, they shake hands with them. So that is the appropriate moment you get a validation of your research. So did I answer your question?
Hope so. Sir, there is two more question. Next question is by Dr. M. Rajesh. That is PhD topic can extended to delete. Hopefully extended to delete. Okay, please clarify, sir. Is
Yeah.
PhD topic can be extended to delete?
Why not? Why not? There are very much possibility, because you have spent a good time with your topic, and now you would like to extend it to further, dig deeper. That's what I said. If the problem which you have resolved to some extent in your PhD, now you want to extend it, explore it further, so obviously you can very well proceed with that. There is no harm in it. You can do it.
Sir, one more question. That is by Madhavan Essay. It's written, you have mentioned no hypotheses are required for qualitative method. Is it rule?
Generally, people do not. Hypothesis comes from the fact. A good question, rather, Dr. Madhavan. But let me tell you one thing. Hypothesis basically emerges from your assumptions. For qualitative research, which needs to which grows with time. So you do not start with fixed variables. If you do not start with fixed variables, there is no way you can get your assumptions. So you can go on adding. As I give the example of that shelter home incident. So they did not have any idea that such kind of abuse was going on for some time. They just wanted to understand their mental health and hygiene. And as they went on probing the respondents, asking more and more questions, because they do not go with a stipulated instrument, it's an open ended question, and whatever responses are gathered, and then they are accumulated in a place to develop the narrative on the translation of it. So when you do not have very structured instrument, when you do not, even the semi structures are not there, if you are having a very open ended question, it is not possible to form an hypothesis. Fine. So that is the reason it is not a rule per se, but it is not possible. Just not, you cannot have a hypothesis. So mostly the pure qualitative researches, like we have in political science, we have in sociology. So they do not have any hypothesis like we do. They all are narratives and discussions. The PhDs that they produce, they only start with research question and try to seek an answer for it. There is no hypothesis into it. Did I answer your question?
So, hope
Yeah.
so. Sir, next question is, are statement of research problem and research questions are same?
No.
Are statement of research problem and research questions are same?
No, absolutely not. One is a assertive statement, second is an interrogative statement. So research statement of problem is a very generic description of what you are trying to achieve. Research question is an interrogative statement which is very open-ended. Research problem statement we have in PhD which having a boundary. But in research question are very open-ended and it is all encompassing. And that is the reason in PhD thesis we have research problem statements. In mostly for management studies, what we see, we have problem statement followed by hypothesis and objective. But in other kind of social science research, they come with research question, then the discussion deliberations. So for them, the hypothesis part is not there. So their statement of research essentially gets translated into multiple research questions. So that is the way the difference is being made. So one is again, I'm reiterating. If you have lost the connect, first is one is assertive statement, a problem statement, which you and after literature review. In research questions, you can have more 3, 4 research questions, but problem statement usually for a PhD is one. For research question could be many. So then that statement gets further split into multiple research questions to solve the problem that you have taken. Fine. If you are able to, there are 3 research questions. Three solution of these 3 research questions collectively complement the problem statement which you have in your hand for the entire 3 years duration, the project which will engage you into. Do I answer your question?
Hope so, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind acceptance of our request to deliver a lecture here in this refresher course. And we will meet soon again for this PhD Bible Boys on 3rd December. So thank you, sir. Sir Bartendu, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I would like to say thanks for a very good discussion on a very important topic. Thank you, sir, for sparing time for ourselves. And in future also, we will be calling you for some other programs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you.
Uh, Sir, one more question came meanwhile.
Yeah.
Want to answer. That is from Madhavan again. Are statistical tools are mandatory? That
Uh,
depends.
that yeah, I mean you have answered it yourself, sir. That depends on the problem you are handling. If it is a quantitative research, then they are mandatory because you need validation for it. If you are doing qualitative analysis, so you can go ahead with the narrative discussions. And these days, again, we are having qualitative research tools are there like NVivo, what clouds are being used, content analysis is there. So some way or the other people are using those statistical tools just for validation sake because good journals they expect you to use those tools. Okay, there's another Dr. Dhaneshwar. Some
Positive.
authors there are descriptive analytical research methods, and you discuss quantitative and qualitative ones. Any difference in those methods? No, qualitative and quantitative methods are the basic foundation of research. Descriptive analytical research methods. um these are small parts of it because I mean there is no such, I mean I'm so sorry to say if somebody has talked about that is no such standard method. Any research methodology book will not prescribe it. Let us stick to the basic, or everywhere you will find qualitative and quantitative methods which where you handle data, and second one you deal with the questions, you are having the discussions. And descriptive part is part of research. Descriptive research is there where we try to provide descriptive statistics. Analytical methods are not there because there, as I said, method and methodological parts. So methods are there. How you're going to analyze them, it depends on your part. But basic difference means quantitative, you are a quantitative researcher or you're qualitative researcher. If you are into the sociological part, if you are doing political science, if you are doing English research, they are basically in the qualitative domain. They do not go with PLS, SEM, structured education modeling. All those things are not there. Fine. Okay. Uh, Mr. Madhavan said difference between exploratory and empirical research. Empirical, yeah. Okay, and question got deleted. Okay, fine. So exploratory research, again, exploratory research when you are trying to explore the association or the arrangement of between variables. Like you are doing correlation. Correlation is a good exploratory research method because the existing variables, how they are correlated with each other, if there is any correlation. So that is one kind of example. Empirical research means when you collect data, but mostly by yourself. So empirical evidences you are trying to prove. I am saying that there is association between height and weight. If I'm trying to put that demand and supply, so do I have any empirical evidence? Do I have some data to showcase that, which I have got collected, which I have sourced from somewhere? So these are the examples when we have the empirical analysis being done. So empirical analysis talks about data that you have collected, preferably the primary through the survey or through data collection or sources. If empirical, yeah, because one could be, it's not very certain, because exploratory is the method how you establish relation, and empirical is talking about the collection of data. So it's not a subgroup empirical research when you have collected data. In empirical also you can show that exploratory research. So I do not put them under say subgroup or any other group. The basic difference, exploratory means when you try to associate them between the variables. The correlation, if you are having some regression, wherever you are trying to show. But if you are talking about empirical research, the data you have collected either by data capture or through data collection. Fine? Yeah.
Sir, no more question now. So we may conclude this session here
Okay.
with thanks. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, dear friends, now we'll take a lunch break and we'll reassemble at 1:30. And at 1:30, Professor NVR Jyoti Kumar will be taking the session, and he's going to talk on the changing role and responsibility of teachers in higher education.